Hi guys, January flew by this year, but I'm quite happy because I managed to read a bit more books than expected. So this was definitely a nice start for the year. Even so, there were a few disappointments, but we do get one or two favorites. So without further ado, let's get into that reading wrap-up of January. The first book I've read this year is Telegraph Avenue by Chabon. This book has quite a particular history for me. It's something I found in Bulgaria in one of my trips 2 years ago now, and I have only read it this year, so it has been waiting quite a time. I found it as a date with a book, and what really catch my attention were the keyword of family, music, and Black America. I really wanted to get to read a bit more about that community, but it was, to be quite frank, a very difficult read for me, and I'm reassured to see that I'm not the only one concerned by this. A few reviews on Goodreads also highlighted the author's writing style was extremely complicated to follow. We have a very difficult narrative full of complex vocabulary, metamorphoses, and very long sentence. I think there is a chapter in this book, if we can call that a chapter, because it's a lot of very long chapters as well. We don't have a clear structure. We have parts in the book. I think we have 4 parts, and then no chapter. Like one part is a very long chapter, but one of them, I think was part 3, I believe. Yes, part 3, A Bird of Wild Experience, was literally one sentence. There is not a full stop in that part, so that just give you an idea that the writing style, I think it was quite maybe an interesting exercise for Chabon, but it was a bit painful to follow, especially when you're not a native reader. So it was a bit of a struggle to read it. I might have read it through 2 weeks, but I was very adamant on not to give up the first book of the year that I was reading. So it's a win in the end because I managed to finish it, and I did enjoy the ending. So we're gonna take our win where we can, okay? In Telegraph Avenue, we're following Archie, a Black American young man who is struggling with becoming a father and supporting his wife through that journey. He's also having some difficulties with his job. He's sharing a business with his best mate, Nate, and that business is struggling. They are lacking customer, lacking sales, and let's say that his partner is not necessarily open to see that. And when we have a very famous black celebrity coming into town, wanted to open a mega store of vinyls, which would be a huge competition for Nate's and Archie business, that does not simplify matter for Archie. On top of that, we have a lot of subplot. We have his wife that is a midwife and struggling with being recognized at the hospital for her work, that is also waiting for a baby. We have Archie and Gwen, his wife, marital trouble that we are going through, and Archie's father coming into the picture, some political struggle within the community, as well as Archie unknown son showing up at some point in the book. So there is a lot to unpack with this story, and that's why the book is quite big. I definitely enjoyed Gwen's storyline, and I would have very much appreciated for her to be put more in the front. It was a bit more interesting to follow her as a character because there is some growth, there is some female rage, there is a goal that she has in her life, which is helping a young black woman to become a mother and navigate motherhood. So that was extremely interesting for me. While Aki's character arc kind of felt flat, we are lacking character development, and he was just at some point just a whiny man, and I was like, man up, please grow up. And there is one character that does tell him to grow up, that maybe like all the distraction he has in his life were not distraction and he should focus on it. So I'm happy this was said quite early in the book, to be honest, and he's taking too much time to act on it. It's taking 500 pages to take on his responsibilities, which was extremely frustrating for me. We also have, and I want to mention it, some young character in play. where I was struggling to see them as young men, as teenagers. They're supposed to be 14, and we're talking about like sex already, and one of them is very cruel to his friend, playing and abusing of his friend's sexual orientation. So that's definitely something I did not appreciate about the book, and I was struggling to see those 14 years old boy being 14. It felt like they had no parental surveillance and guidance. It was, yeah, every time I was reading about them, I was like forgetting they were 14. So I think that's definitely a miss here by the writer. But like I said, I really enjoy the end, especially thanks to Gwen's story. And if you're interested in Black American life in the years 2000, that can be a nice book for you. Just beware of the writing style. Very, very heavy. The second book that I've read in January was also a bit of a disappointment, and this is Assistant to the Villain by, what's her name? Nicole Maehrer. I know this book was a huge success last year on Bookstagram, BookTok, BookTube, you name it. And maybe that's why it was such a disappointment for me, because I was sold a morally grey villain and I could not find it. The plot for me was a bit flat, the character development was a bit lacking as well. It was fun, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun, I've read it very fast, but it was missing that X factor that made the book gripping for me. I find that our villain is not so much of a villain. It does, don't get me wrong, it does do very bad stuff. It does have some rage and some needs to torture and maybe expose a few headless bodies in his house, but each of his actions became quickly justified by our main characters, and so everything is reasoned, everything has an excuse, a justification, and so we are lacking that very evil motive, and sometimes we're even lacking a motive. It's just like you're pissing him off and he's going to end you, or you annoying little ducks in the pond and he's going to like eat you a bit too much. So like I said, I was lacking that theme that made a morally grey character so interesting for me. So that's my biggest critique of the book. I was sold a morally grey villain, I did not find it, and that kind of spoiled a little bit my reading. However, I appreciate a lot our main character, Evie. She's bright and sunny, always smiling, even if she's has some bad experience and bad story to tell. She does not let that destroy her and take her good humor away, and that's something I think that is very strong. We do have some topic around the woman position in a medieval settings, and I would have wished to see that a bit more, to be more developed, but it is what it is. We do speak about it. It does impact the character and the storyline, so I will accept it as it was. And I cannot not mention this, but we are getting such a huge plot twist at the end, so much action, like the end is really pure chaos, that it does make this book a 3-star read for me and enjoyable, and I am looking forward to the second book as well. Just yeah, if you were expecting a morally grey villain, that's not what we have, in my opinion. But apart from that, we have a nice Miss Sunshine, Mr. Grumpy story plot. Even so, maybe the attraction between our two main characters is too much emphasized and we don't see it as much. It's just said a lot, but we don't necessarily see it within the characters' action and what. So that is for you, Assistant to the Villain. Next, I'm moving to poetry with this beautiful French book. I know the camera don't give it justice, but I think it's a very beautiful object as well. The publishing work on this book is just wonderful. We have beautiful drawings as well. And why is it of interest for English speaker and for this channel? Because it is the first, I believe, translation of Gobelin Market, or by Christina Rossetti, translated in French by Clémentine Beauvais and illustrated by Digley. And I did not know anything about Christina Rossetti, so it was a very nice discovery. And we have in the introduction of this book some very nice note about what is it to translate a book, and especially poetry, and the creative freedom that a translator can take when it comes to poetry. And I really like what they did is that we have the French version and then we have the original version, and so You can compare the translation, or you can just enjoy those two texts as independent texts, which is more what I've done, I think. I really like the French translation. It I kind of read it out loud to make the poetry live a little bit more in my house, and the French version for me brought me a bit more out of breath than the English translation. There is a lot of like iteration with it, a lot of mention of food, but also of faction, especially when the goblins attacked the sister Lizzie. Anyway, this was a very nice discovery and my favorite book of the month. So if you want to read in French, I will recommend it. It's Laura, Lizzie et les hommes gobelins. After my poetry break, I went back into fantasy with a Gathering of Shadow by V.E.Schwab. So this is book 2 of A Darker Shade of Magic, and I liked it so much. I think I prefer it to book 1. My issue with book 1 is that it was difficult for me to get into the story. I kind of forced myself in it, while with book 2, the first page is gripping. Like, we start into the action right away. We are on a boat with Delilah, which is a character that I really like, and we're playing pirate, which I don't think I read a lot of books with this type of setting. So it was new, fresh, and yeah, really enjoyable. I don't have any other words for this book. I really liked we explore a little bit more the magic system of this universe, and we also see different characters. I particularly liked Ree's point of view. It's a characters, I read the book the first book a long time ago, but it's a characters on the first book that we see more toward the end, and this show appearing a little bit shallow. And in this book I really liked how we get to see his thought, his evolution, and especially his reflection around life and death, and the links that is now attaching him to his brother's life. And that was extremely interesting. I highlighted I've read that book, I have its paper copy, but I read it on my e-reader, and I've highlighted so many passages and sentences around that topic that Reese is having. So it was very interesting on that point. I'm a bit disappointed of the character development of our main characters, I have to say that. Delilah and Kel, for me, could be a bit more mature, could grow a bit more, and I'm quite interested to see that happening in the final book, which is, what is it? A Conjuring of Light, which I'm going to read with some friends, hopefully in February. But when I finish this book, guys, I wanted to read book 3 so much, and the only thing that made me stop was the fact that I had to first write a book review of it. So yeah, it's been a long time since it happened to me that I'm reading a series and I really want to jump into the next installment. So definitely would recommend. Even so, again, book 1 was a bit more slow for me. We're more into developing the universe. Book 2, we are definitely in the action, and I loved it. And have I mentioned, we have a magic tournament. That was great, and we have a bit of political intrigue as well, so that was amazing for me. Really, really loved this book. Not 5 stars, but we're very close to it. And finally, I finished January with Et du ciel tombèrent 3 pommes, putting the English title somewhere on the screen. This is some Russian literature translated in French by Ekaterina Cherezova, and we are not in Russia, but we are in Armenia, which is a country I didn't know much about, so I got to learn a little bit. The book does not give us too much historical dates and indication to like place the story in a timeline, but it got me curious, so I did Google a little bit about Armenia and learn a few things, and it's definitely now a country I want to visit, so very well done for this short story. It's a very short book. I think it's only 263 pages, the main story, and then I have a few chapters from what seems to be another book. But I really liked it. We are around a family story here again. It's a very slow-paced one. It's very relaxing in a way. We're following our main characters, what's her name? Anatolia, whose family faced a lot of drama and curses apparently. And she's trying to... We're starting the book with Anatolia trying to accept death, and in the end she's gonna slowly go into wanting to live and accept life for what it is. I really like this book. It's about resilience, it's about community as well, because it takes place in a small village in Armenia on top of a mountain that get completely isolated by the war and by a lot of natural disaster as well. Again, the people of that story were not lucky. Almost everyone in the village die. Like for 50-70% of the book, it's a village of elderly people just trying to live by and accepting life as it is. And it's really about resilience for me, because they are taking care of the fields, they're doing homemade cheese, they're living a very traditional life, and they're 70 years old. There is no kids, no young people to help them. So that was quite impressive to read about. There is a lot of powerful sentence as well about life, death, but also the challenges that life can put in our path, as well as what it is to be friend, but also journalism in a way. One of our characters, the secondary characters, end up using paper journal to do cigarettes, because it's like journals are not giving me anything interesting, because we're publishing every day, nothing is intelligent, it's just like no good ideas coming into it, and you end up using the paper journal for something else. And I thought that was quite funny but also maybe still an actual critique of what's going on in our time, where everyone is documented, commenting about things happening live right away, instead of taking a step back, thinking about it, and coming back to that event later. We're also talking about motherhood, which I don't know if you can see but I'm gonna get into soon, so it made me cry a little bit because of this, and I will recommend it. I don't know how the English translation will be in terms of the writing style, but I really liked it, and it was a very cozy read. So yeah, that's it. That's all the book I've read in January. Not too much, the pile is not too heavy for me, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed those books, and I'm happy that I read 5. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you read this book, and also about your favorites of January, and then I'll see you end of February to talk about my next and upcoming readings. So see you soon. Ciao.